Very nice introduction. Nice to join Bangladesh student group. CAP, community acquired pneumonia. Okay, it's a very common condition for all of us. So we have to improve the outcomes through education. There is a new paradigm shift in the understanding of community pneumonia and the way we manage and treat community pneumonia. And the watchword is to select appropriate empiric antibiotic therapy. Empiric means we do not wait for the cultures to come and guide us to treat the patients. Why we don't do that? Because we will lose very valuable time if we wait for the antibiogram to come and give us the guidance. So the paradigm shift in the treatment is early antibiotics, appropriate empiric antibiotic therapy. So how do I improve the outcomes? That's what we are going to learn. She has made a very uh, decent introduction. Thanks for her. Now, as you see here on this slide, we have 4 or 5 entities, and the ones 4, 2, 3, 4, 5 are nosocomial pneumonias. What is nosocomial? Hospital acquired or a healthcare acquired or ICU acquired or ventilator acquired. Something to do with the healthcare, right? Healthcare related pneumonias are called the hospital acquired pneumonias associated with healthcare, ICU acquired, and ventilator acquired. Obviously, we are not going to touch upon this group of conditions today, and our focus is on community acquired pneumonia. Okay, then what is community acquired pneumonia? We require to know that. This is the definition that is followed worldwide for community acquired pneumonia, an acute infection of the pulmonary parenchyma. Remember, it's an acute infection of the pulmonary parenchyma associated with symptoms of acute infection, accompanied by the presence of an infiltrate, acute infiltrate, not a chronic infiltrate, on the chest radiograph with auscultatory findings consistent with pneumonia. All these, an acute infection, pulmonary parenchyma, symptoms of acute lung involvement, acute infiltrates in the chest radiograph, clinical signs of pneumonia in a patient not hospitalized or residing in a long-term care facility. Why? If you go to those people, that becomes non-community acquired anemia, pneumonia, that becomes hospital acquired pneumonia. Okay. Now, we'll follow the guidelines, international guidelines of the American Thoracic Society, Infectious Diseases Society of America, IDSA, and ATS, American Thoracic Society IDSA joint meeting was held in 2019, and guidelines have been formulated. And what I'm going to talk to is today is the updated guidelines of ATS and IDSA. And also there is a consensus statement on CAP in the Indian scenario that also we will share. And there is what is called NICE, National Institute for Clinical Excellence from UK. NICE guidelines also will find place in today's presentation. I'm going to leave at least 3 or 4 PDF files as a reference for the students, and they can go and visit those sites and read those papers for further information. Okay, evidence-based practice, best outcome for the patients, best use of the resources, restricts the idiosyncratic behavior. You have a legal protection when you follow the guidelines, and you can identify the research needs. It's a tool for education, and this gives you a public confidence if you follow guidelines. Now you see pneumonia presents in 2 different forms. We call it as classical pneumonia and atypical pneumonia. Classical pneumonia is sudden onset of CAP, high fever, shaking chills, pleuritic chest pain, That means if the patient breathes like that, there will be a catch in the pneumonic area. Shortness of breath, productive cough, sputum will be coming. Sometimes the sputum will be blood tinged or rusty in color, like the old iron rust. That rusty sputum is significant for the diagnosis of pneumonia. And patient's general condition is rather poor. And mortality up to 20% of the patients with bacteremia may die. With proper treatment, we can reduce it to very low to 1 to 3%. Yes, pneumonia, that is Streptococcus pneumonia, is the major causative agent. This is the classical presentation. Sudden onset of acute community-acquired pneumonia, high fever, shaking chills, pleuritic chest pain on deep breathing, shortness of breath, productive cough, rusty sputum, blood-tinged sputum, poor GC, high mortality, S pneumonia is the cause. This is the classical presentation. We have atypical presentation where it is gradual in onset or insidious in onset, maybe over 15 days or 1 month, low grade fever, dry cough, no blood, good general condition. That is why this is called walking pneumonia, walking cap. The fellow is ambulant and he will not have any difficulty in the general condition. Mortality is rather low. Mycoplasma, chlamydia, legionella, rickettsia, and viruses are the cause of atypical pneumonia. If you say atypical pneumonia, you are dealing with one of those things, either mycoplasma or chlamydia or legionella or rickettsia or viruses, right? So the classical type and the atypical type. How does it come? How does the infective agent get into the lungs? There are 3 routes by which it can find place into the lungs. 1, inhalation. 2, hematogenous. 3, aspiration. The oropharyngeal cavity has got several bacteria, and there are protective bacteria also, protective secretions, which prevent the occurrence of infection into the lung, and immunity also is there. When that is overwhelmed, the secretions from the oropharyngeal tract find way into the lungs. There is also impaired function of the glottis, which could be a cause. Hematogenous, blood through the blood, septicemia, and can get a pneumonia there. And people who have epilepsy, who are swimmers, who are alcoholics, who have sort of alcoholic related sort of lack of consciousness or semi-consciousness, aspirations. Children also, aspiration could be a cause. So the commonest is inhalation in children, epileptics and alcoholics and people who are mentally retarded. Aspiration is a possibility. Hematogenous is possible when there is septicemia. Okay. So what are the risk factors for pneumonia? Who is at a greater risk? The higher the age, the more is the chance. Obesity is also related. Smoking, peripheral vascular disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and asthma, immunosuppression, HIV, institutionalization for old age, for mental retardation, for any region, and dementia. These could be the risk factors. So epidemiology, I'm not going to spend much time on this slide. It's a very common disease, and notably the importance is 18 to 24. We do not get many cases. The highest incidence is less than 5 and more than 65. Disproportionately high mortality in 65 above. Overall mortality could be as low as 2% and as high as 30% without proper treatment. Only less than 1% are those not requiring hospitalization. The pneumonia, if it is managed at home, though they do not require hospitalization, there the mortality is rather very low. You can see here in this pie diagram the various causative agents. Sometimes you can find no causative agent in about 40 to 60% of the cases, and 2 to 5% there may be more than one causative agent. As I told you, Streptococcus pneumoniae dominates the list of causative agents, 56%. H. influenza, 10%. Chlamydia, 6%. Legionella, 6%. Staph aureus, 5%. Mycoplasma, 4%. Gram-neck bacilli, 4%. Viral pneumonias, 9%. So what did we learn of this slide? Strep pneumoniae is the commonest cause of CAP, followed by H. influenza and other factors. Okay. Streptococcus pneumonia, previously called as pneumococcus. When we were student, it was called as pneumococcal pneumonia. We don't call that as pneumococcal now. It is streptococcal pneumonia. Most common cause of CAP, 2/3 of the CAP are due to strep pneumonia. It is a gram-positive diplococcus. Typical symptoms are shaking chill, fever, rusty sputum, pleuritic chest pain, and cough with malaise. Lobar infiltrates may be there on the chest X-ray. And there may be an immunocompromised host. Who is that? People with anorexia, people who are in ethanol, people who are HIV positive and sickle cell disease, people who had splenectomy, any other hematological disorders or malignancies. They are the immunosuppressed hosts. Okay, 25% of these people will have bacteremia. Once they have bacteremia, they are prone for septicemia, and then distant lesions of pneumonia infection can occur in other parts of the body, particularly in the liver, subcutaneous tissues, and muscles, and that can lead to serious effects. Just look at the age-wise incidence. Less than 5 on the x-axis, less than 5 and more than 65. You see, the incidence is less than 5, it is more. 5 to 17, slightly more. Then 18 to 24 is the lowest. 25 to 44, 45 to 64, and more than 65. It is lies because the population in this age group will be lesser, and that will be the reason for the smaller bar there. But this is about the incidence. How about the mortality? The mortality less than 4 and more than 65, straight away, there is no mortality in young children or adults. Very little mortality at 45 to 64. Shh, it goes to 75% if a person is more than 65. So what does that tell me? If an elderly person more than 65 is admitted or diagnosed as having CAP, the chances of dying are much higher, much higher. So we have to be very vigilant and vigorously treat them. So what are the risk factors for hospitalization? Again, unemployed, older, unmarried, recurrent colds, COPD, asthma, steroid use, and then chronic diseases like diabetes and heart failure, neoplasia, and the degree of smoking. Okay, alcohol is not related to increased risk of hospitalization. But alcoholics can become sort of obtunded, and then they may become semi-conscious and they can aspirate the nasopharyngeal secretions. Risk factors for mortality, again, as pointed out, more than 65, bacteremia with Streptococcus pneumoniae or staph pneumonia, methicillin resistant MRSA, Pseudomonas, extent of radiographic changes, degree of immunosuppression, amount of alcoholic consumption have a bearing on the mortality. Now you can see here what is the most common causative agent from 26 positive prospective studies from 10 different countries. S. pneumoniae is the commonest, and then C. pneumoniae, and then viral pneumonias, mycoplasma, Legionella, H. influenza, in that order. Okay, how do I evaluate the patient? Okay, we have learned the etiology, the bacteriology profile, the risk factors, the presentation, classical and atypical, and the mortality patterns, the incidence patterns. Now, let us look at how to evaluate the patient. So how do I evaluate? History, as suggested now, cough, fever, shaking chill, breathlessness, shortness of breath, chest pain. This is the history. PE, physical examination, signs of consolidation, signs of acute pneumonia, pleuritic chest pain associated with pleural rub, and you do a chest X-ray, there is an infiltrate single or multiple. If a patient comes with history suggestive of CAP, and then physical examination findings suggestive of CAP, and you have CXR positive chest X-ray, then you do a chest X-ray at that point after these two, and the chest X-ray may have no infiltrates or may have infiltrates. If there are no infiltrates, this history may be something else. This breathlessness may be something else. So you have to think of alternate diagnosis. A patient with this history usually will show an X-ray positive. So infiltrate or clinical evidence of CAP is there, then you have to do whether the patient can be managed at home or he should be admitted. This is a fundamental question which all of you should answer. Okay. How do I decide? Then I do a port or a curve. What is port and what is curve? It comes in the next slide. So depending on the port or the curve, I either treat the patient at home or admit in the medical ward or if required, admit in the ICU. So what is the flow diagram? History, physical examination, do a chest X-ray, PA view, and if possible, a lateral view also. No infiltrate, most likely not pneumonia. There is an infiltrate or the clinical evidence is very strong. Then evaluate for admission. How do I do that? I do a port score or a curve score, which we will discuss shortly. Depending on the score, the patient can move into three areas. One, he can be managed at home. Most of them are. Two, they may be requiring admission, but not in the ICU, but in the medical ward. And three, they may require ICU admission. Okay. What is the management guideline? What are the most important things? Rational use of microbiology from the laboratory. Pathogen directed antimicrobial therapy whenever possible. This you put a query now, because in the latest recommendation, we are not going to wait for the pathogen isolation and antibiogram. Prompt initiation of antimicrobial therapy is the catchword, is the watchword, and decision to hospitalize based on the port and curve. Now today you must learn these two things very thoroughly. When do immediately I should start the antibiotic, and what is my antibiotic of empiric choice? Number two, when do I treat him at home or when do I admit? These decisions have to be made by you. Look at here. This is what is called the port scoring. What is port? Pneumonia Patient Outcomes Research Team. So patient outcomes research team is port, and this is also called the PSI, Pneumonia Scoring Index, PSI or port scoring. There are several variables: age in years, comorbidities, clinical findings, investigations. So you write the age, and the men 50 years, and then the age in years, you just write that number. Let us say example 50 years of age. Women, just subtract 10. If the woman is 50 years, just write 40 here. Nursing home resident, add 10 points. Neoplasia, 30 points. Liver disease, 20 points. Congestive heart failure, 10 points. Cardiovascular disease, 10 points. Renal disease, 10 points. These are all the comorbidities which can influence the outcome. That's why they're important. What are they? Neoplasia stands first, 30 points. Liver disease, 20 points. All the other three, CHF, CVD, renal disease, CKD, they have 10 points. Age in years for men, and for women 10 less than the age. Nursing home resident, 10 points. Then clinical findings: altered sensorium, respiratory rate more than 30, systolic blood pressure less than 90, temperature, hypothermia or increased temperature more than 40, and then pulse rate 125. This is what we are teaching in COVID also, because COVID pneumonia is a viral pneumonia, nothing very different from the community acquired pneumonia. So altered sensorium, respiratory rate, systolic blood pressure less than 90, temperature, hypothermia or more than 40 degrees, both are not favorable, and then pulse more than 125, add the points accordingly. Then do the investigations: arterial pH less than 3.5, that is acidosis, that is 30 points. One more than 30, 20 points. Serum sodium less than 130. Hyponatremia is a risk factor for bad prognosis. So that you add 10 points. Hematocrit, blood glucose more than 250, uncontrolled diabetes. PaO2, this is arterial oxygen, not SpO2, not SpO2. PaO2 less than 60, 10 points. X-ray and evidence of pleural effusion, 10 points. Like that, I go on adding the points. Then what do? I classify them into class 1, 0 points, no predictors. Class 2, less than 70 points. Class 3, 71 to 90 points. Class 4, 91 to 130 points. Class 5, more than 130. Why do I need this classification? Because these require hospitalization and these may not require hospitalization. These may or may not require hospitalization. Okay. Now this slide tells about that. No risk factors, no hospitalization, outpatient treatment. Class 2, less than 70, outpatient treatment. Class 3, 71 to 90, brief hospitalization. Class 4, 91 to 130, port score, inpatient. More than 130, put him in the ICU. Look at the mortality, it is going up from 0.1 to 31% in class 5. So what is very important? You have to do the port scoring based on this. How can I remember all these things? No problem. There is a small calculator which is called the MedCalc. You download, all of you download this MedCalc Plus. That is an app. Maybe most of you have it. Otherwise, you download that onto your mobile phone. On the smartphone, just enter the information required there. You will get the port score and also get the class and also direction whether the patient is to be admitted or to be treated at home. Okay. Now, it looks very complicated for you people. And in the periphery, when you're working in a smaller village or in the primary health center, you will not have all the facilities to do the arterial blood gases, sodium, and all that. What you can do? You can use Curb 65. What is Curb 65? C for confusion, U for urea or bun, R for respiratory rate, B for blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic. 65 is the age. Curb 65 is very easy to apply, and studies have proved Curb 65 is as good as port scoring. But port scoring is useful to predict mortality better. For admission purpose, this is good enough. For mortality prediction, we may require a port score. But if you don't have access to all the variables in the port score, you can as well do the Curb score. What is Curb score? Is the patient having confusion? Is the blood urea more than 30? Is the respiratory rate more than 30? Systolic blood pressure less than 90? Diastolic blood pressure less than 60? Is more than 65. 1 point for each. So how many can come? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Okay, sorry, these together 1 point. 5 points can come. So maximum Curb 0 to 1, Curb 2, Curb 3, Curb 4 or 5. Very simple. If the patient doesn't have confusion, blood urea is normal, respiratory rate is less than 30, blood pressure is maintained, patient is either less than 65 or he doesn't have any other symptoms, then he has a score of 0 and 1 and home treatment. If the score is 2, short hospitalization. Score is 3, medical ward. 4 and 5, ICU care. This is as clear as this in the international scenario, and we cannot but follow this particular pattern. Okay. Now, algorithmic approach, step by step. There is a CAP patient who is having the history, physicals, and an X-ray evidence. The first step is, what is the age of the patient? Is it less than 50 or more than 50? Because we know the greater the age, the greater will be the morbidity and mortality. Step 1, what is the age? Step 2, does he have any comorbidity? Comorbidity present, no comorbidity. For less than 50 years, or the patient is more than 50 years, straight away do the port score. Okay. And this port score, class 2 to 4, you require either OP, IP, or ICU treatment. Class 1 is no risk factors. He can be definitely treated at home. Okay, the step 3 is no curb positive, that is 0 to 1 or 0 or curb positive, put them onto the port. And then no curb positive, class 1, only OP. The curb is positive, that means any one of those in the curb are positive. And then you have to do the port and classify them as class 2, 3, 4, or 5. What are 2, 3, 4, and 5? This is one. With this port scoring, with all the variables entered in the calculator there, MedCalc, then you classify him as class 1 or class 2 less than 70, class 3 less than 90, more than 71, 71 or more, and then class 4 91 to 130, class 5 130. Why do I know that? Do that. I have to decide whether to admit, and if so in the ICU or in the ward. And if it is less than 3, 2 and 1, home treatment, 3, brief hospitalization, 4 and 5, hospitalization. Okay, this is the crux of today's presentation. Curb and port related admission decisions are the crux of today's presentation. Class 1 and 2, summary table, usually no hospitalization. Class 3 may require hospitalization. Class 4 and 5 usually require hospitalization. What are the poor prognosis? Respiratory rate, a PaO2, FiO2 less than 20 or PaO2 less than 60. This is not, mind you, SpO2 which you measure on the finger. This is the arterial oxygen. Okay, does the patient have any need for mechanical ventilation? Is there hypotension? Is there a need for vasopressor? Is there altered mental status and oliguria? Okay, will the blood cultures or any bacteriology help me? Not necessarily. Here, today's scenario is these are the guidelines published in Lancet 2015. And outpatient, we don't really require to do any culture or any blood culture or sputum culture or any antigen testing or any invasive respiratory sample. This is a new finding. Earlier, when we were students, any patient pneumonia, do a sputum culture, not required. Today, the teaching is for those who are qualifying for outpatient treatment, no bacteriology is required. Straight away do the empiric antibiotic treatment. If the inpatient is there, low severity, maybe just sputum culture, these are not required. Of course, if the patient is admitted, not ICU, moderate severity, class 3 or 4, then you do those things, and these are not routinely done. If the patient is in class 5, ICU, of course, you can do all these things. So this classification into class 1 to class 5 is required for two purposes. One purpose is to decide whether you want to admit the patient or not, manage him as outpatient or inpatient, either in the ward or in the ICU. The second is what sort of bacteriology I will ask for. That also depends upon the class of the patient. There are some major criteria and minor criteria. So this is for the criteria for ICU admission, which is, this is not a very important topic of our discussion today, but nonetheless, I'm sharing the presentation. You can go through this slide also. So the limitations of common investigations are the quality of the sputum issues, the positivity rates, culture and smear correlations, blood cultures which are not very sensitive, poor positive rates, serology very costly, time consuming, viral isolations not feasible. So in short, community acquired pneumonia is not basically dependent upon the bacteriology or other investigations. It is basically dependent upon clinical assessment, and clinical assessment. Port score and curb score, and put them on the appropriate classification into class 1 to class 5 and then manage. Okay, there is what is called the pneumonia severity index, which we have seen, the curb 65. There is also called the CRB 65. What is CRB 65? Clinically only, no urea also here. Blood pressure, respiratory rate, and confusion. Even measurement of urea also can be avoided if you don't have the facility, because you have to decide quickly whether he goes to class 1 or class 5. For that reason, in the periphery, if you don't have the facility to get the BUN or the urea, don't bother. Is there confusion? What is the respiratory rate? Is there hypotension? What is the age? That tells you. ATS, IDSA criteria, and there are also some newer criteria called SMART COP rule and SCAP rule and all, which I'm not going to go because we are primary care physicians. We are in the grassroots level workers. We are not super specialists. We are not very much interested in the more sophisticated thing. We have to use CURB 65 or CRB 65. If possible, do a port also. That suffices. Okay, this I'm skipping. The SCAP or CAP, this also I'm skipping. Now, what are the various laboratory tests? Chest X-ray, PA and lateral, CBC differential, bun creatinine, sugar to know whether there is any comorbidity, and the liver comorbidity. Serum electrolytes are important, I tell you, because hyponatremia is associated with poor prognosis. And also look at PO2, arterial oxygen, or SpO2, the finger. Both are useful. These are in the gray because they are not the main important things, and you may even not do them from the international recommendations. This is a change, paradigm change in the understanding of pneumonia. Okay, the value of chest X-ray is very useful, needed to establish the diagnosis, but it doesn't show the prognosis because the shadows will not disappear immediately, and patient will come back and tell you, "Sir, you treated, but my X-ray is still showing the opacity." It will take time. Okay, and it's also useful to rule out other disorders and other etiologies. Today, in situations where you have facility for CT scan, you can even think of a CT scan, but generally it is not required. Okay, chest X-ray pattern can tell you what organism it is. Lobar, these are the organisms. Patchy, atypical pneumonia. Interstitial, viral, the COVID pneumonia also is like this, interstitial. Cavitatory, anaerobic bacteria, tuberculosis and all. Large effusions, staph, anaerobes and Klebsiella. The moment I see the X-ray, I will be able to guess what will be the pathogen. Okay. Now, the sensitive good sputum sample is obtained only in around 40% of people, and 83% show only one predominant organism. So getting a proper sputum sample is highly essential. You can see the specificity of these tests is quite high. The sensitivity is rather low. What is that? Sensitivity is the ability to rule out disease when the culture is negative. So you can say with 50% certainty that there is no pneumonia if the culture is negative. Specificity is the ability to confirm disease when the test is positive. That is quite high. That means the culture is positive, you are sure. The culture is negative, you cannot exclude. Okay. Now, what are the various organisms retrieved from the blood culture? Obviously, staph pneumonia is the first one. Enterobacteriaceae, 16%. Staph aureus, 11%, and others 5%. 2/3 are staph pneumonia, streptococcus pneumonia. Strep pneumonia. Sorry. Streptococcus pneumonia is the pneumococcal pneumonia of previous days. So mortality based on the organism, you see highest mortality with Pseudomonas and Klebsiella and Staph aureus, and comparatively less with the other organisms. Now, traditional treatment paradigm, maybe around 15 years back, maybe around the turn of this century, conservative treatment start with the workhorse antibiotics, give cotrimoxazole, give amoxicillin or some one drug, and slowly increase if those are not responding. Today, this is not the practice. You should not do that way. Now hit hard, hit early, and with appropriate antibiotic combinations also. Very short duration, 5 to 7 days, de-escalate wherever possible. This is a new paradigm shift in the understanding. Earlier days, conservative start, workhorse antibiotic, slowly increase the non-responders. This should not be followed because this is not the teaching today. Today's teaching is you hit hard, new paradigm. Early you start the treatment. In fact, within 4 hours of the symptoms, appropriate antibiotic, short duration, and de-escalate when possible. Short duration, I mean 5 to 7 days. I have got some criteria also, I will show you. And the objective is avoid bacterial resistance, avoid fatalities due to sepsis. Both have to be matched. So now you see hospital-acquired pneumonias, HAP cap and CAP. The mortality, traditional approach, 17%, 34%, 45%. Inappropriate therapy in the traditional approach. Today, we are not doing that. Okay. Today, now you see switching after susceptibility test, mortality is 52. Adequate in the first few hours you start, mortality is only 18%. This clearly proves early antibiotic therapy, empirical antibiotic therapy, the mortality is reduced very much compared to waiting for the culture results. So risk assessment is very important, and these are what is called the OPAT. What is OPAT? OP parenteral antimicrobial therapy. This is our Manipal Hospital OP parenteral antimicrobial room. We have seats like that. Patient come there and they get the IV antibiotic, sit there for 15 minutes, and then they go back and take rest. That means for giving IV antibiotics, you don't have to admit the patient. You can come on an OP basis, parenteral antimicrobial therapy, and OPAT is very much in vogue in most of the corporate hospitals and big hospitals. Even in your outpatients also, you can have a small treatment room and ask the patient to come and have the antimicrobial parenteral therapy, IV therapy like this, and then the patient can wait for 15 minutes and then go home without admission. Okay, now what are the drugs I choose? This is where exactly very important for all of you. And there are 4 groups of drugs: macrolides, fluoroquinolones, and beta-lactams. And macrolides are azithromycin, clarithromycin, and then erythromycin and telithromycin. And of course, doxycycline is a different group of drug. It is not a macrolide. So this is the group 1 drugs. Fluoroquinolones, respiratory fluoroquinolones, levofloxacin, moxifloxacin, gedifloxacin, and trovafloxacin are the respiratory fluoroquinolones. And you have the beta-lactam antibiotics, ceftriaxone, cefotaxime, and then beta-lactam inhibitor drugs like sulbactam, tazobactam, and piperacillin. So we have basically 3 groups of drugs. One is the macrolide group of drug, the other is the fluoroquinolone, the third is the beta-lactam type of antibiotics. What combinations we use and when do we use? So empiric outpatient treatment, healthy and no risk factors for the strep pneumoniae, you just give macrolide or doxycycline. That means any one of these 3 or doxycycline will be the treatment. No risk factors or healthy patient has just strep pneumonia, macrolide, azithromycin, erythromycin, clarithromycin, telithromycin can be given, or doxycycline. Presence of comorbidities, use of antimicrobials earlier in the 3 months, and regions where high rates of infection with macrolide resistance is there, then you use respiratory fluoroquinolone, moxiflox, gemiflox, or levoflox. The second drug, companion drug, will be beta-lactam. Either you use a respiratory quinolone plus beta-lactam or beta-lactam plus macrolide or doxycycline. This is in this type of patient. The first group of patients are who are healthy, no risk factors, and then there are cases of strep pneumonia, macrolide antibiotic or doxycycline single drug. Supposing they have comorbidities, or there is a chance for resistance, or there is a more than 25% infection rates with macrolide resistance, or they had antibiotics in the previous 3 months, they qualify for 2 drugs. What are they? Respiratory quinolone plus beta-lactam, or respiratory quinolone plus macrolide or doxycycline. Okay. Number 1, respiratory fluoroquine, FQ, or a beta-lactam plus macrolide. Here, beta-lactam agents are 3rd generation only you have to use. Cefotaxime, ceftriaxone, amoxiclav. If penicillin allergy is there, patient is penicillin allergic, then you can use respiratory fluoroquinolone. Or entropinum is another option in case of penicillin allergy. These are all non-ICU inpatients. Earlier, we treated those who are outpatients, and these are non-ICU inpatients. Here, respiratory fluoroquinolone plus beta-lactam. combination will be used, or a macrolide plus beta-lactam can be used. Empiric treatment for ICU patients, beta-lactam plus azithromycin or fluoroquinolone. Penicillin allergy patients, fluoroquinolone or azotenum can be used. These are for the ICU patients. Then suspected Pseudomonas, if you think he is having Pseudomonas, you have to use carbapenem or cefepime or tazobactam. And again, a combination of the above beta-lactam, the carbapenem group or the tazobactam, and combined with aminoglycoside and azithromycin, or beta-lactam plus aminoglycoside, or anti-pseudomonal or anti-pneumococcal fluoroquinolone can be used. Penicillin allergy, azotenum, beta-lactam. So I have given you all the possibilities, but sometimes there will be methicillin resistant staphylococcus. It's called MRSA, methicillin community acquired pneumonia, MRSA. Vancomycin and linezolid are the drugs of choice. Methicillin sensitive, beta-lactam, and sometimes respiratory fluoroquine. Okay, methicillin resistant, vancomycin and linezolid. How long I have to give? 5 days. Afebrile for at least 48 hours or to 72 hours to stop antibiotic. Minimum of 5 days, and once his fever has dropped from there, 2 to 3 days. Okay. Longer duration of therapy may be required in cases where there is associated no active pathogen is identified and there is extrapulmonary infection. You see here, if I delay the treatment 0.5 hours, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4, 5, 6. What is the survival chance? If I treat within the first half an hour, 85 or 84% is the survival. Okay, if I delay for 6 hours, the survival chance is just around 45%. So it depends. The time is life here. In this pneumonia treatment, time is life, and empiric early antibiotic treatment is the need of the hour. Okay, summary of the empiric treatment may be confusing for all of you, but just remember this. If the patient qualifies for outpatient treatment, that is port class 1 to class 2, these people, macrolide or doxycycline or fluoroquinolone, only a single drug. Macrolide, I mean azithromycin, clarithromycin or erythromycin. Doxycycline is also a separate group of drugs. Fluoroquinolones, levofloxacillin, gatifloxacillin, moxifloxacillin, any one of them, single drug. Patients admitted to the general medical ward, class 3 or sometimes class 4, and these require a third generation cephalosporin. That is, you know, your cefotriaxone or cefixime plus a macrolide as above, a beta-lactam plus or minus, macrolide plus fluoroquinolone or fluoroquinolone alone sometimes. If they're in the ICU, third generation cephalosporins, macrolide plus fluoroquinolone, 3 drugs are here. Here, 2 drugs are here. So if it is Pseudomonas, then the treatment is different. If it is MRSA, then the treatment is the linezolid. Okay. Now this is a flow chart. Curve 65 is 0 or 1. PSA classes 1, 2, and 3. Outpatient treatment, or you may admit for social reasons. Means what? It doesn't have anybody to take care, very elderly or a child, something like that. Antibiotic, monotherapy without comorbidities. Risk factor 2, that is curve 65 is 2 or, and then PSI 4 or 5 class, inpatient, no ICU, no microbiology test can be ordered here. Here, no microbiology. Antibiotic combination, one is a quinolone, the other is a macrolide or beta-lactam. That is 2 drugs. Here is only 1 drug. High risk people, that is curve 3 and 4 or PSI class 4 and 5, severe CAP criteria, either more than 3 major or more than 1, more than 3 minor or more than 1 major criteria. Admit in the ICU, do the microbiology, give combination, 3 drugs you give. This is a summary slide of all the treatments I have. Again, I brought it into a separate slide for you. Class 1, class 2, OP treatment, clarithromycin, fluoroquinolone. Second, combination or with doxy. And once is class 3, OP plus or minus IP, fluoroquinolone IV or IV beta-lactam plus macrolide, azotenum and fluoroquinolone third. And then class 4 or class 5, medical ward, fluoroquinolone macrolide, third generation beta-lactam and macrolide, and entropinum or macrolide. And then ICU admission, you have the third generation beta-lactam plus macrolide plus fluoroquinolone, carbapenem, sulbactam, and tazobactam are required when you think of Pseudomonas. And then MRSA, you have to give linezolid or vancomycin. Okay. Now, strategies for prevention, cessation of smoking, influenza vaccine, pneumococcal vaccine for all the people above 60 years, and you have to protect them. People with heart failure should get pneumococcal vaccine, and then starting the first dose of antibiotic within the first 4 hours and checking the oxygen status. How do I prevent CAP? Cessation of smoking, influenza vaccine or flu shot through the flu months, and the pneumococcal vaccine for all the people, particularly those above 60 years. Everybody above 65 should get a pneumococcal vaccine, irrespective whether they have any other risk factors or not. And people with splenectomy, people who have immunocompromised state, they must all get the pneumococcal vaccine. And this is a single shot pneumococcal vaccine. Starting the first dose of the antibiotic within the first 4 hours is the crux of treatment. So when do I switch to oral therapy? When the patient symptoms disappear, when they become afebrile, when the WBC are decreasing, when there is a good GI tract with no vomiting, no diarrhea, you can otherwise favorable clinical outcome, you can switch to oral treatment. Management of poor responders, consider non-infectious disease, less common pathogens, consider tuberculosis in our countries, and then serological testing, and then broaden the antibiotic therapy and consider doing a bronchoscopy. CAP complications, hypotension, septic shock, pleural effusion can occur, lung abscess can occur, and then multiple metastatic abscesses in staph cases, and pyemic abscesses can also occur. Hypotension, pleural effusion, lung abscess, metastatic multiple abscesses, or pyemic abscesses. Pneumocystitis carinii pneumonia is an important cause of pneumonia in the immunocompromised people. Primarily atypical pneumonia. PCP pneumonia persists with slight fever. Diagnosis is usually histological, silver staining of the sputum. Treatment is cotrimoxazole. It doesn't work for other antibiotics. You have to give cotrimoxazole or pentamidine. Viral pneumonias, of course, they are not a part of routine bacterial pneumonias, and you have to keep in mind all the viral pneumonias. So how best to win the war? Early antibiotic treatment within 4 to 6 hours, empiric antibiotics without waiting for the cultures, port and carb scoring is essential, early hospitalization in class 4 and class 5, and change the treatment as per the pathogen sensitivity. If you have a report, decrease the smoking cessation, decrease smoking cessation advice, counseling on the smoking, arterial oxygen saturation assessment, blood cultures, if the things are not progressing well, pneumococcal and influenza vaccination, and stop smoking. So these are the best ways to win the war against the community acquired pneumonia. Now, I have around 15-20 x-rays. It depends whether now the time is I'm allotted around 1 hour, and it is not at 1 hour. I have another 5-6 minutes. If you want, I can show you some of the x-rays. I don't know my coordinator whether she will like me to show some x-rays or not.
Yes, sir, obviously.
Okay, this will be very
We'll like to
interesting.
see the
So please see the pictures. So this is the trachea, this is the aortic knuckle, this is the aortic root, this is the pulmonary artery, this is the left lung, this is the lung, this is the rib there, and then the spleen, and this is the liver, and this is the heart. All of you will be knowing about that. This is the normal CXR. Okay, can you see this X-ray on the right hand side here? And what is the abnormality? There is a mild LLL, left lung lower lobe. You have got a mild patchy infiltration. This may be sometimes confused with if the patient is a woman, this may be confused with the breast shadow. You have to be very careful. So this may be very mild looking. Then you see here, very typical right upper lobe pneumonia. Okay. And there is compensatory emphysema here. Then you see left lower lung, complete left lung is, there is a complete consolidation of the left lung. This is the fundic gas shadow, and this is a compensatory emphysema. Okay, this is LLL. Then you see here PA view, right middle lobe right presents like this. Middle lobe pneumonia. Lateral view of the middle lobe, this is the lower lobe, this is the upper lobe, and this is the middle lobe. Okay, right lateral view is important, pick up middle lobe disease. So this is an AP view of the same patient with the lateral view in the right middle lobe. Then you see lobar versus segmental. This is a complete middle lobe is involved. That's the lobar pneumonia. And this is small segment of the lobe is involved. That's called segmental pneumonia. Segmental usually viral, lobar usually bacterial. Okay, from the X-ray picture itself, I'll be able to guess the pathogen, most of the cases. And you see bilateral multilobar. There is a middle lobe here. There is also an upper lobe in the left side. And you see here. So this is the left upper lobe and this bilateral here. So lobar pneumonia can be bilateral also. Sometimes, usually it is unilateral. Usually it is not bilateral, but then sometimes we have patients who are immunocompromised, elderly, institutionalized patients. They do aspiration patients. They do have bilateral disease. Special forms of consolidation. This is the lingular consolidation. You see here, this is the lingular part. That is the lingular consolidation. And there is air within the consolidation. That is called pneumatocele. Pneumatocele and lingular consolidation. Now you see here, sometimes it appears like a very circumscribed lesion, round consolidation. You may suspect it as a malignant lesion. The differential diagnosis is malignancy because it is a very circumscribed nodular lesion. But the pneumonia can also appear like a round pneumonic consolidation. Here also you see very circumscribed round pneumonic consolidation that occurs. These are most of the X-rays are our patients' X-rays only. From our files, I have shown you these things. Diffuse alveolar involvement, you see, diffuse alveolar. This is a pattern of viral pneumonias, atypical pneumonias, and then aspiration pneumonia, usually lower lobe, usually bilateral. Usually bilateral, nearer to the hilum, nearer to the cardiac shadow, because the direction of the trachea is like that, and this is aspiration pneumonia. Who are the people for aspiration? Epileptics, young children, people who are drug abusers, people who are severe alcoholics, people who have coma for any reason. They can have aspiration pneumonia. Then PCP, that is pneumocystis carinii pneumonia or cytomegalovirus. This could be there because you see here, this is a pneumonic shadow, and you can see here. That is there's sometimes radiation induced pneumonia can occur, which is very diffuse and around the hilum. Okay, radiation induced pneumonia. Now you see this is an empyema, pus in the pleural cavity here. So this is empyema left pleura, and there could be a lung abscess. That is the abscess there, and this is the fluid level in the abscess cavity. Lung abscess, because pneumonia is not properly treated, the patient went into lung abscess. Then you see here empyema again in the right side empyema, and the same empyema CT picture, the right lung is full of pus. Okay, so this is CT empyema. Then mycoplasma pneumonia, chlamydia, mycoplasma, legionella, viruses, they cause atypical pneumonia. So where the picture doesn't look very dangerous or very catchy, and they have pneumonia, this is called walking pneumonia, as I told you. So sometimes you have right lower lobe involvement here. So that is again a pneumonic pattern of mycoplasma. Mycoplasma, usually it will be like that. Now you have the mycoplasma pneumonia, may have skin changes also. And there is a consolidation due to mycoplasma. Sometimes can occur very heavy consolidation of the upper lobe. And you can see, I hope you can appreciate the erythema multiforme on the skin. And other type of skin lesions are a feature of mycoplasma pneumonia. Skin lesions, pneumonia, mycoplasma pneumonia. Okay. Now chlamydia, Diffuse pneumonitis in children are usually affected. There is a panbronchiolitis. You can see the pneumonic consolidations around the bronchioles. And then you have rare types of pneumonia, psittacosis, diffuse and bilateral, butterfly shape. Okay, Legionella pneumonia, like just like looks like tuberculosis. Anybody with this X-ray comes with a longer duration of history, they would suspect tuberculosis in our countries. But if you do examine properly, you can see the history is very short, and then you can do the culture, sputum culture, and isolate Legionella. Okay, this is all I have for today. I think I have utilized exactly 1 hour of the time. And thank you all for patient listening. I am ready to take any questions if you have any.
Sir, thank you so much. I'll see if there is any question for now. Sir, our heartfelt gratitude to you uh, that you've managed some valuable time from your and you've taught us a very common disease over here, that is community acquired pneumonia. We've learned a lot from you, and we've actually easily got the things cleared, and we want more classes from you, and we are very much thankful to you for that. And inshallah, we hope that you will join us more often from now on.
Sure. Now again, I am just repeating for the sake of the students here. Pneumonia treatment has undergone a paradigm shift. What is the shift? We require to classify the patient into class 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 based on either curve or port. Curve, if it is not available, at least forget about the U, C, R, B,
CRP,
at least
65.
you have to do. And after having
Yes,
done
sir.
that, once you classify, the patient should be treated as outpatient in most of the cases. And empiric antibiotic treatment, not depending on the bacteriology or waiting for the bacteriology. Bacteriology is not required in majority of the cases because majority are home managed, and the treatment is either macrolide or fluoroquinolone, or you have got the FQ or macrolide or doxycycline, one drug. Supposing they move to the next grade, then you can use a beta-lactam or macrolide or a combination, 2 drugs. If you admit them into the ward, 2 drugs are required, and again bacteriology can be given. If you admit them in the ICU, 3 drugs are required. And then early antibiotic treatment, and then starting very early, less than 4 hours, and always watching the people who are above 65, because they are the ones who are going to land up in problem, and that you have to take care and prevent complications. Then how do I do that? Ensure that pneumococcal vaccine everybody gets, flu vaccine, stop smoking, reduce alcoholism, educate on the symptoms of pneumonia, early antibiotic treatment, hit hard, hit early, and then for a shorter duration of 5 to 7 days, and then come out. The old paradigm of starting with sulfadiazine or starting with chlorothiamoxazole, then not responding, wait for 10 days, then do culture, do this, then add another drug, absolutely irrelevant. We will lose the patient, and patient will end up in complications. The commonest organism, Streptococcus pneumoniae.
Streptococcus pneumoniae.
So that you have to remember. And the best thing is either use a macrolide or doxy or fluoroquinolone as a single drug. If necessary, do a combination with the macrolide and beta-lactam antibiotic, or you can use an IV antibiotic, beta-lactam and meropenems and then antropenems and those things when you are suspecting Pseudomonas. Vancomycin and linezolid if you are suspecting methicillin resistant Staph aureus. Staph aureus. Okay, this is the take home, and antibiogram and doing sputum cultures and sputum examination, it takes a second role. It is not the primary thing in this disease today. This is the message of the international community. Let us hope we follow it for our patients and see that we get better outcomes for our patients by early antibiotic treatment.
Yes, sir, you've made it so easy for us to understand the difficult and tough factors that we've struggled with. Sir, we want you to take our gratitudes from the core of the heart, and we want such lectures from over the seas um, more often, so that we can treat the very common case that is in our country and treat efficiently. So thank you so much again.